You honestly think you belong in this family? Look at yourself. The words hit me like ice water as I stood in front of the mirror in my wedding dress. David stepped forward and said, "Mom's right, I can't go through with this." But what they didn't know was about to change everything. I'm Arya and I'm 26 years old. 3 weeks ago, I thought I had it all figured out. I was a junior marketing coordinator at a small firm, nothing fancy, but I loved my job. I'd been with David for 3 years, and we'd built what I thought was a real partnership. Sure, his family had money while mine was solidly middle class, but love conquers all, right? Wrong. From day one, his family made sure I knew I didn't measure up. They'd comment on my clothes, ask pointed questions about my little job, and always find ways to remind me that David's ex came from better circumstances. I spent 3 years trying to prove I was worthy of their acceptance, shrinking myself smaller and smaller to fit into their perfect world. I thought if I just tried harder, smiled brighter, and never caused problems, they'd eventually see my worth. I was so focused on earning their approval that I forgot to ask myself if they deserved mine. If you've ever felt like you had to shrink yourself to fit in, hit that subscribe button because this story is going to show you exactly why that's the biggest mistake you can make. Have you ever loved someone so much that you forgot to love yourself in the process? It was supposed to be my final dress fitting. The wedding was just 2 weeks away, and I was excited to see how the alterations looked. David's mother, Patricia, had insisted on coming along. "I want to make sure everything is perfect for my son's big day," she'd said with that smile that never reached her eyes. The moment I stepped out of the dressing room, I knew something was wrong. Patricia's face twisted with disgust as she looked me up and down. The seamstress was still pinning the hem when Patricia spoke up. "This dress is far too expensive for someone like you. David's ex, Rebecca, would have looked stunning in something like this. She had the figure for it, the grace. You look like you're playing dress up." My cheeks burned. The other customers in the shop turned to stare. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Patricia, I think the dress looks beautiful. David loved it when we picked it out." She laughed, cold and sharp. "David says a lot of things to keep the peace. But honestly, do you think this is appropriate? The cost alone could feed a family for months. That's probably more than you make in 2 months at your little marketing job." The seamstress looked uncomfortable, pretending to focus on her pins while this woman humiliated me in public. I was about to respond when David walked in. Finally, I thought, he'll defend me. "What's going on here?" he asked, looking between his mother and me. Patricia gestured at me like I was a problem to be solved. "I'm trying to help her understand that this dress, this whole wedding, it's all too much. She's not ready for our world, David." I looked at David, waiting for him to tell his mother she was out of line. Instead, he ran his hand through his hair and sighed. "Maybe we're moving too fast. I don't think you're ready for our world either, Arya." The floor felt like it was dropping out from under me. "David, what are you saying?" Patricia's voice cut through the air like a blade. "What he's saying is that you'll never be good enough for my son. The wedding is off." The entire shop went silent. I stood there in my wedding dress, pins still holding the hem, feeling like I was drowning in white silk and shattered dreams. I thought the humiliation at the bridal shop was rock bottom. I was wrong. 3 days later, I was scrolling through social media when I saw it. David had posted a photo of himself at some rooftop bar with the caption, "Taking a much-needed break from relationships. Sometimes you have to step back and reassess what you really want in life." The comments were brutal. His friends were congratulating him on dodging a bullet. His sister Emma had liked the post and commented with a champagne emoji. My heart shattered all over again, but this time it was mixed with something else. Anger. The second betrayal came through my coworkers. Apparently David's family had been busy spreading their version of events around town. According to them, I was a desperate gold digger who had trapped their poor innocent son. They painted me as some calculating woman who had manipulated David with fake tears and emotional manipulation. I heard she was already planning to quit her job after the wedding. I overheard someone say in the office break room, "Classic gold digger move." I kept my head high and continued working, but inside I was crumbling. Every whisper, every sideways glance felt like another knife twist. Still, I refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. The third betrayal was the worst. I was in the middle of a client presentation when my boss pulled me aside. His face was grim. "Arya, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Did you forge any documents or misrepresent any information to win the Henderson account?" My blood turned to ice. "What? No, of course not. Why would you ask that?" Someone called claiming to have evidence of irregularities in your work. They said you've been under a lot of personal stress and might have made some poor decisions. It took me exactly 2 seconds to figure out who had made that call. Emma, David's sister, worked in corporate law. She had connections everywhere and clearly wasn't above using them to destroy my career. Sir, I can provide documentation for every single decision I made on that account. Someone is trying to sabotage me, and I think I know who. My boss looked uncomfortable but nodded. Get me that documentation, and Aria, maybe take a few days off while we sort this out. I drove home in a daze, but instead of collapsing on my couch like I wanted to, I did something different. I opened my laptop and started researching. If David's family wanted to play dirty, they had picked the wrong opponent. I spent the next few sleepless nights digging into their business, their social media, their public records. And slowly, very slowly, I started finding cracks in their perfect facade. Little inconsistencies that didn't add up, numbers that didn't match, stories that changed depending on who was telling them. They thought they had destroyed me, but they had actually done something much more dangerous. They had given me nothing left to lose. What they didn't know was that my worthless marketing degree had taught me something valuable: how to research, how to analyze data, how to spot inconsistencies in stories and numbers, and most importantly, how to build an audience. For the past year, I'd been running an anonymous blog called Breaking Point Stories. It started as my way of processing the constant criticism from David's family. I'd write about toxic relationships, about people who make you feel small, about finding your worth when others try to strip it away. I never used real names, never shared specific details, but the emotions were raw and real. Somehow, my little blog had grown to over 50,000 followers. People shared their own stories in the comments. They sent me messages thanking me for making them feel less alone. I had no idea how powerful my voice had become because I'd been hiding behind a screen name, Truth-Teller26. But now, as I dug deeper into David's family business, I discovered something interesting. Their construction company had some very creative accounting practices. Charitable donations that didn't quite add up. Tax write-offs for projects that seemed to exist only on paper. Invoices from companies that led to dead ends. I sat back in my chair, pieces of a puzzle clicking into place in my mind. David's family had built their reputation on being pillars of the community. They hosted charity galas, donated to local causes, gave speeches about family values and integrity. But what if their perfect image was built on lies? What if the people who had spent 3 years telling me I wasn't good enough were hiding secrets that could destroy everything they'd worked for? I smiled for the first time in weeks. They had no idea what was coming. Maya had been my best friend since we were 7 years old, and she was the only person who truly understood what David's family had put me through. When I called her that night, voice shaking with a mixture of rage and excitement, she dropped everything and came over with wine and tissues. "Aria, you're scaring me a little," she said as I showed her spreadsheets covered in highlighted inconsistencies. "But also, I'm kind of proud of you. This is the first time in 3 years I've seen fire in your eyes instead of defeat." Maya had never liked David's family. She'd tried to warn me countless times that they were toxic, but I'd been too blinded by love to listen. Now, as I laid out everything I'd discovered, she leaned back and whistled. "So let me get this straight. The same people who called you a gold digger have been skimming money from charity donations?" "That's just the beginning," I said, pulling up bank records I'd found through public filings. "Look at this pattern." Maya studied the documents, her lawyer brain kicking into gear. "Aria, this is serious stuff. If you're right about this, you could bring down their entire business." Meanwhile, David's family was celebrating their victory. Emma posted photos from what she called their freedom party, a dinner to celebrate David being saved from making the biggest mistake of his life. The photos showed them toasting with expensive champagne, laughing and looking utterly pleased with themselves. Patricia had apparently been making the rounds at their country club, telling anyone who would listen about my desperation and how I'd thrown a tantrum when they tried to gently suggest the wedding was a mistake. The girl actually thought she belonged in our family. I heard through mutual friends that she'd said, "Can you imagine? David is so much better off without that burden." Each cruel comment they made, each lie they spread, each moment of their arrogant celebration just added fuel to the fire building inside me. They thought they had won. They thought I was broken and defeated. They had no idea I was just getting started. This is where everything changed for me, and I have to ask, have you ever reached that breaking point where staying quiet just wasn't an option anymore? The annual Henderson Family Foundation Charity Gala was the social event of the season. 200 of the city's most influential people gathered to celebrate Patricia and her family's generous contributions to the community. I watched from across the street as guests in designer gowns and tailored suits walked up the red carpet. I took a deep breath, smoothed down my own dress, a stunning black number I'd bought with my first freelance paycheck, and walked straight through the front doors like I belonged there. The ballroom was buzzing with conversation and clinking champagne glasses. David spotted me first, his face going pale. "Aria, what are you doing here?" "Just enjoying the party, David. Don't mind me." Patricia was at the podium, giving her annual speech about family values and community service. "The Henderson family believes in integrity above all else," she was saying. "We believe in supporting those less fortunate, in building up our community through honest work and genuine care." The irony was perfect. I walked calmly to the front of the room and waited for a pause in her speech. Patricia's eyes widened when she saw me, but before she could react, I stepped up to the microphone. "Excuse me, everyone, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have something important to share." The room went dead silent. Patricia tried to step forward. "Security, please escort this woman out. She's not invited." I smiled and pulled out my phone. "Actually, I think you'll want to hear this, especially since many of you have been reading my work for months without knowing it." I looked directly at Patricia. "My name is Aria Chen, and I'm the anonymous blogger you've all been sharing on social media. Truth-teller 26. The one who writes about toxic people and fake relationships." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Patricia's face turned white. "But tonight isn't about relationships. Tonight is about charity fraud." I held up a folder thick with documents. For the past 3 years, the Henderson Foundation has been claiming donations to organizations that don't exist. They've been pocketing money meant for homeless shelters and children's hospitals. David pushed through the crowd. "Aria, don't do this. We can work things out. I made a mistake." I looked at him with complete calm. "I'm not the same person you threw away, David. You taught me exactly what I'm worth, and it's a lot more than any of you deserve." I set the folder on the podium. "The evidence is all here. I've already sent copies to the IRS and the local news stations." The room erupted in shocked murmurs as I walked toward the exit, my head held high. By the next morning, my blog had gained 15,000 new subscribers. The story of the charity gala confrontation spread across social media like wildfire, and suddenly everyone wanted to know more about the woman who had exposed the Henderson family's lies. 3 major marketing firms reached out to me within a week. I accepted a senior position at Davidson & Associates, with a salary that was triple what I'd been making. Turns out, companies value someone who isn't afraid to speak truth to power. The IRS investigation moved quickly once they had my documentation. Patricia and her husband faced federal charges for tax evasion and charity fraud. Their construction company lost its license, and their reputation crumbled overnight. David called me dozens of times, leaving voicemails that ranged from angry to desperate to pleading. "Aria, please, we can fix this. I love you. I made a terrible mistake." I listened to exactly none of them. 6 months later, I ran into him at a coffee shop. He looked tired, older. "Aria, I'm sorry. For everything, I should have defended you." I smiled and sipped my latte. "You're right, you should have. But thank you for not doing it. You taught me something invaluable." "What's that?" "They said I'd never be good enough. Turns out, they weren't good enough for me." Your worth isn't determined by people who don't value you. It's determined by how you choose to stand up for yourself when it matters most. If this story resonated with you, or if you've ever had to find your strength after someone tried to tear you down, I want to hear about it in the comments below. Smash that like button if you believe everyone deserves better than people who make them feel small. And subscribe because next week I'm sharing the story of someone who stood up to workplace bullies and completely changed their career. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. Look at your screen, 2 new videos are waiting. Click quickly because you won't want to miss either of these powerful stories.